Thank you, my brother, friend, and advisor, Femi. I was going to hail him, but I realized I'm in a very proper audience, so I have to be careful what I say. And I also am very grateful, having listened to that spoken word, that there was some break, where you had Dio come up, you had Femi come, because, that's kind of performance that when somebody puts up, you want people to digest it and meditate on it, and I think it's a very appropriate point to transition into sharing a few experiences. I think I will share mine, and I've also been given both the honor and the responsibility to invite His Excellency after I finish speaking to the podium. But the good news is that knowing him as I do, and as many of us do, we know that he's not just known for his humility, but for his simplicity. So I think my work will be as simple as Femi's own when I do the invitation. Let me just share with us my brief remarks. Let me start by saying that my brief remarks will focus on my perspective on what I honestly believe it will take us to build the Nigeria of our dreams. Like our chairman and friend, Mr. Shegu Olujobi, told us, in many respects, we are still dreaming with our eyes open. But I believe in the power of vision. If we can embrace what I will share with us and what I believe has already been shared and what will be shared by His Excellency, I do believe that our journey will not only begin in earnest, but it will accelerate. Therefore, my remarks will focus on 3 points, or you might even call them 3 pillars that have shaped and are shaping my perspective and also my commitment to nation building. Perspective that I believe, if followed sincerely by all of us, will help us build the Nigeria of our dreams. So what are these perspectives? First, I'll summarize them, or I'll say what they are, then I'll go through them very briefly, one by one. First, I believe we need a committed generation to build the Nigeria of our dreams. Second, we need an Olympic mindset to build the Nigeria of our dreams. And then third and finally, we must not squander the grace of God. First, it takes only one committed generation to rebuild a nation. It has been said that it takes only one committed generation to rebuild a nation. Why not us? Why not now? Those of us that are people of faith, we know that we say that faith is when? Now. We need a committed generation to build the Nigeria of our dreams. This quote is not original. Dick Kramer, my mentor and a mentor to several of us that are here, and former boss, often pointed out to those of us he mentored over the years that this is what it would take to build the Nigeria of our dreams. And for those that do not know it, Dick has been in Nigeria for close to 40 years. He came here in 1978. Dick Kramer, in turn, learned this from a former Spanish managing partner of the firm he spent most of his career working for, Arthur Andersen. This managing partner was the managing partner of the EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa region of Arthur Andersen, which is no more. This managing partner at the time witnessed the Spanish miracle, which took place between 1959 and 1974. The Spanish miracle was the name given to a broad-based economic boom in Spain from 1959 to 1974. The Spanish economic miracle was initiated by reforms promoted by the so-called technocrats, who with Franco's approval, Franco was the then head of state of Spain, put in place policies developed by and for Spain. The technocrats, many of whom were members of Opus Dei. Opus Dei was a Catholic, not was, and it still is a Catholic, it was one of the orders of the Catholic Church. I know we have some Catholics in our midst, but the important thing is that this is like their professional order. But this, and as you know, Spain has lots of Catholics. The technocrats, many of whom were members of the Opus Dei, were a new breed of politicians who replaced the old Falangist guard, the old order in Spain at the time. As the Bible says, there is nothing new under the sun. Other nations have successfully done what we are seeking to do in Nigeria. And we must learn from what has worked. We must refuse and reject the argument of exceptionalism, that Nigeria is so unique. that the principles of God will not apply here. Hallowed be thy name, O God. His Excellency, the Vice President, this has already been said, pointed out by Shegu, in his keynote address at one of the AIMP annual nation building workshops, which I believe happened either last year or the year before, said, and I quote, "To build a new Nigeria, we need a new tribe, a tribe of men and women of all faiths and ethnicities, committed to a country, run on high values of integrity, reflect a bit on what I call the audacity of faith." You know, the Bible tells us that faith calls those things which do not exist as though they were. In other words, faith believes in vision, dreaming with your eyes open. We must exercise faith and the power of vision by committing to transform our country into the Nigeria of our dreams. I believe in the power of vision. My vision of a new Nigeria is a country that is one of the easiest and most attractive places to do business in the world. Now, one of the things His Excellency, the Vice President, points out often, and this is something I believe in, and I'm so glad he's even more persuaded on this point, is that we need to create a country where the so-called private sector, the citizenry, the public, are the ones building the country. It's a fallacy to believe that governments build countries in the sense that, like, they will have to go and build the business, build the industry, make the car. It doesn't work. Governments create the enabling environment. In fact, it's a unique responsibility of government to create an environment where the people can thrive, and therefore where the private sector can actually build. And God will help us to do it in Jesus' name. Amen. We must lay a new foundation for national unity, pride, and a culture of excellence. We must aspire to leave behind a legacy that, similar to Singapore, would establish Nigeria as one of the 21st century greatest economic and political success stories. A good starting point, or a good starting place for us, will be to dramatically reduce the cost of doing business in Nigeria, to take us from being one of the costliest and most expensive places to operate to one of the least expensive and attractive countries in the world to do business. In other words, to create the right enabling environment for business, our businesses, and our people to thrive. This will boost our economic growth and development and create high-quality jobs and meaningful employment for our people, which would in turn foster the unity, stability, and empowerment we all desire for our dear nation, Nigeria, and her citizens. This is how a country like Singapore emerged and became one of the most prosperous countries in the world under the visionary leadership of Lee Kuan Yew. When nations obey the principles that lead to abundance, as articulated in the Holy Book, the Bible, they prosper. There's no mystery to it. When nations obey these principles, they prosper. Conversely, when nations do the opposite, it doesn't matter what they say. When they do the opposite, even if they call on God's name, they suffer lack and poverty. These are principles that are settled. They are settled principles. This reminds me of the parable of two sons told by Jesus in Matthew chapter 21, verses 28 to 31. Here goes the parable. What do you think about this? Jesus asked. A man with two sons told the older boy, "Son, go out and work in the vineyard today." The son answered, "No, I won't go." But later, he changed his mind and went anyway. Then the father told the other son, "You go." And he said, "Yes, sir, I will." But he didn't go. Which of them obeyed his father? They replied, "The first." In some respects, and I just use Singapore as an example because I thought that's one that we will readily relate to. In some respects, Singapore could be likened to the first son in the parable of Jesus, following and obeying the principles that lead to prosperity, even though, broadly speaking, they are not a religious nation. In our country, broadly speaking, we are mostly religious. But we have not followed the principles that lead to genuine prosperity. Or to put it bluntly, we have made fundamental blunders, monumental errors, following the wrong values. And as a result, there is so much lack, suffering, and poverty. And we pretend. We tell ourselves a lie and say, why are we suffering? It is the principles that we have followed. May God help us. We must change this and go back to the principles that underpin and lead to prosperity. Which are the same principles His Excellency the Vice President pointed out in his speech on a new tribe: integrity, hard work that produces excellence. I was going to quote Aristotle that says, we are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. In other words, when you work hard at something, many of us have read the book Outliers, The Story of Success by Malcolm Gladwell. He says practice 10,000 hours is what leads to excellence and being world class. If we practice the right things, of course we'll produce excellence. Some of the other qualities he pointed out were justice and love of country. This principle, or well, let me put it this way. Principles are universal and are always at work, whether we acknowledge them or not. In his influential book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey said, principles are rules or laws that are permanent, unchanging, and universal in nature. We must build the Nigeria of our dreams on the set of principles that underpin genuine and lasting prosperity, such as integrity, hard work and excellence, justice and love of country. Finally, let me speak briefly. We must not squander the grace of God. Let me conclude by speaking briefly on a subject that is very dear to my heart, which is I must not squander the grace of God. We must not squander the grace of God. We must master and make the most of the opportunity God has given us to serve our nation. David said, is it a light thing to marry the king's daughter? Is it a light thing to be the king's or a king's son-in-law? We must make the most of the opportunity we have been given by God to serve our nation. Jesus in the Bible admonishes us to walk while it is day, for the night is coming when no one can walk. It has been said, the opportunity of a lifetime must be seized within the lifetime of the opportunity. The AIMP network is a platform to support us to make the most of the opportunities we have been given and are being given to serve our nation and build the Nigeria of our dreams. Paul said, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace toward me was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly. I labored earnestly, more than they all. Yet, he said, not I, but the grace of God. What is he telling us? That I made the most of the grace I was given. I want to serve in a way that when it is all over, I can honestly say to myself, first and foremost, and to those around me, that I gave it my all. I worked hard. I poured my life. The grace bestowed upon me by God into the assignment I've been given, that I made the most of the grace bestowed upon me by God and utilize it for the assignment I have been given. In other words, I will not and I do not intend to squander the grace of God. I want to serve with the motto, no reserves, no retreat, no regrets. Like Paul, when it is all over, I want to be able to say, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. I invite all of us here today to adopt this same mindset as we run this race together to build the Nigeria of our dreams. At the end of our race, may our Father in heaven say to us, well done, good and faithful servants. You have been faithful in these things. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. I can invite him. Okay. So it looks like the program is running as it originally planned. Now, it is my pleasure to invite His Excellency the Vice President. Before he comes up, let me just say two things. First, in addition to being the Vice President, those of us that know him know that more than most people I know, if not all, he has had a burden for nation building. So much of a burden that at times I wondered how he managed to keep up all the responsibilities he accepted at the time until he told me his secret, which for those of you that will pay me, I will share with you. The secret is so valuable, I can't share it with everybody. I mean, I think I need to be very selective. But let me say, it was as part of that he accepted to actually join the advisory board of Apostles in the Marketplace. Even though at the time he was extremely busy, he was stretched. And he did it and did it well. In fact, I remember one day we were having a meeting because then I think we had either Dr. Kolade or Dick Kramer as the chairman. Or maybe both of them were sort of co-chair. I can't remember. But what I remember is that one left, then the other left, and they asked him to chair the meeting, and he still made the time and ran the proceedings until he came to a logical closure and conclusion. I believe we are extremely fortunate that we have in our vice president somebody who is leading by example. Because like we have been taught, nothing beats leading by example. People watch what you do, not what you say. It is therefore my singular honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo,